What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Vanguard. We're back here on Bocage once again, following the stage for Major 4, whatever we're calling it these days, the Major 4 tournament. Oh boy, again, was it a good one, as we had lots of upsets. We had some teams that didn't normally do well against certain teams. A lot of teams surprised a lot of people. So, like I said, we're battling here on Bocage here in ranked play as usual. But here, Major 4, we got our recap here. We have our champs bracket as well, which we'll quickly glance at. Not going to go super in depth. We'll make that a full-on separate video along with the power rankings video and everything else. We'll get to that in a further video. But let's start with what happened at the tournament. We have round number 1 in the winners bracket. Let's just say my predictions, not even close. Like, they were, I don't know if I got like almost anything correct because of how crazy this was. So let's just remind you guys, a lot of these teams were fighting for champs qualification, right? So we only had, I think, 2 or 3 teams in total that knew their champs' fate, if you will. We had Optic and Atlanta both secured 100% for champs. Other team, Paris, completely eliminated. Well, the teams 3 through 11 all had a shot to make it to champs. So keep that in mind. Throughout this entire thing, a lot of these matchups were huge for a lot of these teams. So here we go. Round number 1, winners bracket. We had London versus Toronto. We picked Toronto, ends up being, or no, I'm sorry, we picked London, ends up being Toronto. Toronto moves on to the second round. Second matchup, LA Thieves versus Atlanta Faze. This one we thought was going to be pretty one-sided as far as Atlanta goes. Somehow, some way, LA Thieves win this one 3-1. Move on to the second round, dropping Faze to the losers bracket already to face off against Paris. So, of course, we all probably will guess how that one goes. Next matchup, winners round 1. New York Subliners versus the Minnesota Rocker. This one goes game 5. All the matches in like the first day went to game 5 with the exception of that LA Thieves Atlanta game, which was really surprising. But New York Subliners, Rocker, game 5, New York moves on. New York was in 11th place starting this tournament. 11th. So they had to win a lot of games in order to get into champs. So keep that in mind as well. Minnesota drops down. Fourth matchup, Boston Breach versus the Florida Mutineers. Another game 5. Florida does win this one, though, moving them on to the second round. So we have Toronto, LA Thieves, New York Subliners, and Florida Mutineers in winners round 2. Let's drop down, though, to the elimination bracket. We have the London Royal Ravens versus the LA Gorillas in London. Although they do secure champs qualification in 3rd place, they do get double first rounded in Major 4. They lose to LA Gorillas in the game 5. LA Gorillas move on to the second round. Next matchup, Atlanta Faze versus Paris Legion. And when I tell you this one went to game 5 as well, you probably wouldn't believe me, but they do. Game 5 for Paris versus Atlanta. And at least for me, I did watch game 5 of this. I was really pulling for Paris. I really was. I was really hoping to not see Atlanta in that next round, given that Optic did start in the elimination bracket for this tournament. So, you know, obviously we didn't want Atlanta to be there, but they end up being there anyway. Next matchup, Minnesota Rocker versus Optic Texas. One of the teams that gives Optic a run for their money almost every single time. Optic does walk away with the game 5 victory. Optic, again, didn't really have the best of stages of major qualifiers, whatever you want to call them. You know, with Pro Loot in and out, Illy in and out. They didn't really play with General at all this major, but still, you know, with the injury to Illy, in and out of the lineup, You know, it was hard to find consistency, hard to get back to that top form that they've been struggling with for so long now. But Optic does move on, though. Game 5 fashion onto the second round. Next matchup, of course, Game 5 between Boston Breach and Seattle Surge. This time, Boston does walk away with it. So Seattle is out, but we will be seeing them at Champs, I believe. So Boston does move on to the second round. So now we got top 8, right? We already went over winners bracket, but next we have LA Gorillas, Atlanta Faze, Optic Texas, Boston Breach. So let's stay down in the elimination bracket. We have LA Gorillas versus Atlanta Faze. Faze does walk away with this one 3-0. Ends LAG's season. I believe they're not at Champs if I remember correctly. Next matchup, Optic Texas versus Boston Breach. Another team that gave Optic some struggles, some hard times, if you will. But Optic does walk away with the game 4 victory. They beat Boston, move on, continue their lower bracket run here, and they still have to beat a lot of good teams in order to get to that grand finals. But we gotta jump back up to the winners bracket. We gotta eliminate or drop down some more teams in order to keep that run going. Second round winners bracket: LA Thieves versus Toronto Ultra. LA Thieves 3-0 Ultra. That's super surprising. Like, how is that a 3-0 out of all these matchups? How is that a 3-0? But yet we have Atlanta and Paris going to a game 5. Like, that's insane. But Toronto not out just yet. They drop down to the lower bracket. Thieves move on to the winners finals. Second matchup, though, we have New York Subliners versus the Florida Mutineers. I don't know if I mentioned it yet or not, but this is the New York Subliners tournament. Right? They're hosting this tournament. What are they going to do in front of their crowd? Well, they're going to 3-0 Florida Mutineers and move on to the winners finals. Crim 6 and the boys clutching up, performing well, and hopefully we'll get to see them a little bit later. So in the winners finals, we got LA Thieves versus New York Subliners. So we have good teams so far. You know, New York's been on the climb ever since the roster changes, and a lot's been happening. So let's keep going here with round 3 in the elimination bracket. We have Atlanta Faze versus the Florida Mutineers. Atlanta continues their run in round 3 with this win over Florida. Game 4, moving them on to round 4 of the elimination bracket. Faze keep going. Optic Texas versus Toronto Ultra. Once again, game 5. I believe this was round 11 as well. I don't remember 100% though. But either way, great games from Optic so far. They take out 3 opponents that they've been struggling against. So they do beat Ultra here. They do move on to round 4 for a rematch with Atlanta Faze, which they've had really, really good luck against all year. So going to this match, their confidence should be at an all-time high. But also, they had struggles recently, so they're not at their top form. So we're down to our final 4 teams. We have LA Thieves and New York Subliners in the winners bracket, Optic Texas and Atlanta Faze in the elimination bracket. Let's keep it going. Let's start out in the elimination bracket for top 4. Championship weights on Optic versus Faze. What else could be better? Well, it would have been better if Optic won. Unfortunately, Atlanta Faze does get the best of them in this one. You know, they looked like the better team in this one. They outslayed, they outplayed, and they just looked like the better team in that matchup. You know, it is the first win for Faze over Optic this entire year. And of course, it's right after Optic has some struggles and, you know, inconsistent gameplay with, you know, in and out with Illy. So I don't want to make excuses for it, but of course, you know, they did play him pretty close. 3-1 fashion, but Faze does just come out. They just looked a little bit better on this day. But of course, there's always champs around the corner. But Optic Texas does bow out at top 4. A great showing after starting in round 1. They win against 3 teams they've struggled against recently. And of course, they play some close games versus Faze. So can't really be too upset with that one. Obviously, given there's, you know, if they would have started in winners, who knows how it would have turned out, you know, if they would have been, you know, in a better situation if they would have been out there. Obviously, they would have, since they would have had a second shot. But either way, Optic out, Faze move on to the elimination bracket final. Let's jump up to the winners finals. LA Thieves versus New York Subliners. Subliners, it's your home tournament. You need to make champs by winning. I think it was every single match, I believe, and they had to make grand finals or something like that in order to qualify. And they needed Florida, I think, to lose or something. Like, every situation they needed to happen, happened, right? New York, 3-1. They beat LA Thieves to make it to the grand finals from the winner's bracket side. That's insane. From starting from 11th place. I believe that win clinched them for champs. Like, that's insane. But LA Thieves not out just yet, but their road only gets harder. They drop down to face off against Atlanta Faze. A very tough matchup, a rematch from round 1, and the same score as round 1 as well. 3-1 victory for LA Thieves. They were looking pretty good this tournament. You know, definitely they've been pretty inconsistent all year. Now, Major 4, now's the time to turn up. You could lose everything else until this point and still have a pretty good chance at champs and still be a good team and waiting for that. So, FaZe does bow out here at top 3. I shouldn't say top 3. At 3rd place. FaZe, of course, we'll see them at champs. LA Thieves we'll see in the grand finals for another rematch from the winner's bracket. This time, will we have the same scoreline? No. So we have the best of 9, of course, so it's going to sound a little bit different. But at LA Thieves, walk away as your Major 4 champions, 5-3 in the grand finals. Obviously, heck of a tournament from New York. They clutched it up. They continued their Cinderella story, and they make champs. I think it's Crimsix and Scump that have been at 10 straight champs. Something like that. Like, it's a crazy number for those two. So, obviously not on the same team this year, but it's still a crazy, you know, number nonetheless. But, you know, again, heck of a tournament from them. But we have our final placements on your screen now. You have LA Thieves, of course, number 1 at $200,000. New York Subliners at number 2, $120,000 for them. 3rd place, Atlanta Faze, $80,000. Optic Texas, $40,000 in 4th place. 5th, 6th gets Florida Mutineers and Toronto Ultra, $20,000 each for both those teams. 7th, 8th place, you had LA Gorillas and Boston Breach, getting $10,000 each team. And 9th through 12th, you have Minnesota Rocker, London Royal Ravens, Paris Legion, and Seattle Surge. All, like I said, 9th, 12th with 0 money. And the last thing I wanted to mention before we wrapped up this video is a quick glance at the champs bracket. So as you can see on your screen, we have FaZe versus Subliners, which should be a banger of a matchup. You have London Royal Ravens versus Seattle Surge. Then you have Optic Texas versus Toronto Ultra. You have LA Thieves versus Boston Breach. So absolutely crazy matchups there. You know, as far as, you know, exact predictions go, we're going to make a separate video. We're going to make new power rankings. We're going to have lots for you in upcoming videos. Just have to make them, of course. But it should be an absolutely insane Call of Duty Championships. Obviously, I would have wished that all the teams were there. You know, we had the old system with lots of pool play. You know, it was like 500 something teams there with pool play, with 20 teams in pool play, you know, round robin. You know, go through the huge bracket. Like, that would have been great. But we do have this system this year. We got 8 teams at champs. So, can't wait for it to happen, but that's going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below if you haven't yet, or if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe, turn those post notifications on so you never miss an upload, and don't forget, you can always change your mind later. With all that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.